Hi, everybody. This is Thomas G. Waits, New York City actor, director, teacher, and playwright, and you are listening to the movie Raid. Chill.
It's time for the movie raid, and tonight's victim again will be Thomas G. Waits, actor, director, played amongst many films as well as TV, such as John Carpenter's The Thing and The Warriors. Hello.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm peachy.
Good. So, yeah, I was saying when we were talking before, I did an interview yesterday because I have a film that's coming out on DVD that I shot back in 1977, if you can remember back that far. It's a movie called On the Yard, and, it was so long ago that they didn't have VHS even back then.
Wow.
But it's finally being picked up and turned into a DVD, and it was my very first feature film, and it's called On the Yard. It's a prison drama starring myself, of course, and John Hurd, an actor named Mike Kellen, Richie Bright, who's no longer with us, Joe Grafassi, Dominic Chianese has a part in it. There's a lot of great actors in it, and it got tremendous reviews when it first opened back in '78. Lines around the block reviews. The New York Times loved it, and so it's just been sitting around, and I don't know, it's one of those independent. It was an independent before there was such thing as independent, directed by a man named Raphael Silver. You probably know his wife, Joan Micklin Silver, who directed Hester Street and Head Over Heels, and another movie with Kevin Bacon that I can't remember the name of, Him and Her, or His Story, Her Story, something like that. Anyway, so that's going to be coming out on DVD pretty soon, so you could probably get it on Netflix. On the Yard, based on a novel by a man named Malcolm Brawley, who also is unfortunately no longer with us. But he was a guy, like in his early 40s, and he'd spent 26 years in prison by the time I'd met him.
Wow.
Yeah. So he did his time, I think mostly bank robbery or whatever. But anyway, it's a prison drama about the hierarchical system in prisons, and it's quite an interesting movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but the last time I saw it, I was 22 when I did it, my first feature film.
Nice.
But yeah, check that out. The other things that I have going on is, I don't know if you know this, but I'm also a musician. I'm just a 3-chord rhythm guitar guy, but I'm a songwriter, and I have a little music act that I'm putting together called The Old Man and the Kid. Me on guitar and a little bit of piano, and my partner is a 16-year-old boy in high school that plays the cajones and sings very, very well. He's a great singer. And so we've been developing that, and we're going to start playing out in New York pretty soon here, it looks like.
Nice.
That's very interesting, yeah. We do mostly original songs. We do a few covers. I'm a big The Band fan, so I do a few The Band songs. You may be too young to remember them, but that's back in the 70s and early 80s, The Band. Actually, they split up in 76, I think. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I wrote a play called Macaire, Macaire, and it's a musical. Well, it's actually a play with music, and once a year I go to Germany to a place called Cologne, or Köln as the Germans call it. They bring me over there, and I go to a film school, and I direct them in a play. So I kind of talk them into doing my play. So it'll be the world premiere of Macaire by Thomas G. Waits, words and music written by Thomas G. Waits, book by Thomas G. Waits, and I won't be in it. I'll just be direct. Enough of Thomas G. Waits. How are you doing, Mike?
I am doing just fine. Just fine. Can't tell you the movie raid's doing just fine. If you guys would actually listen, you would know how great it would be. I ain't gonna tell you. Have you ever actually incorporated your music in all your plays, or have you been starting doing that now?
I try to incorporate my music in all my plays. I directed Shakespeare's As You Like It this summer at the Baruch College of Performing Arts, and I had written a score for it, basically, with another guy, and almost turned it into a musical. I mean, not quite, but there was certainly a lot of music in it, a lot of excellent singing, and it was all my acting students, because as you know, I run the TGW, Thomas G. Waits Acting Studio here in New York City, and one of the things that I do differently is that I try to create opportunities for my students, not just to be in my acting class, but also to be in plays. opportunity to perform in New York City, which is, the only way you really get good.
Yeah, it can be really difficult, especially now, considering what's been going on. But do you have kind of a non-profit thing going on, or do you make it pretty fair for everybody?
Yeah, no, it's not a non-for-profit. That's a very hard status to come by,
Yeah.
non-for-profit. The 501(c)(3), they don't give them out very often. They used to give them out, like they were water, but ever since 9/11, they kind of cut way back on those things. So, no, I'm just a straight-ahead little, doing business as Thomas G. Waits, and, we, fortunately, however, we are going to get the support of the school of Baruch College this summer, and they're going to co-produce it with me, so it's not all going to be on my neck, so to speak. And I'll be doing Taming of the Shrew and possibly Much Ado About Nothing, two Shakespeare comedies. One of my goals in life is to direct all of Shakespeare. I think that's how you get, Mozart makes you smart by listening to it. Doing Shakespeare makes you great.
And by listening to Devo, it makes you drunk.
Pour me another one.
Yes, do it! Yeah. But would you when it comes to a directing point of view, what would you expect out of your shows, or at least in general, what would you from a director's point of view?
First of all, they have to be entertaining. If they're not entertaining, there's no point. Nobody wants to come in and have to suffer through a piece of life. They want to, be. There's a French word called divertissement, which means divert. To divert someone's attention, to change their consciousness, their state of mind. So the first thing is the project, the film or the movie, or the TV show or the play, whatever you're doing. It has to be entertaining on a certain level. You have to be able to grab, that is, arrest the audience's attention. And then after that, depending on what the tone of the piece is, whether you're working on a comedy or a tragedy or comic tragedy, historical, comical, tragical, historical, comical, you have to capture the right tone so that, you bring the audience into the story, take them on a journey. I guess one of the things I try to do, aside from making it entertaining, is to make it truthful. It's got to be truthful, otherwise people don't watch. It doesn't mean it has to be real. It can be unrealistic as long as it's truthful.
Any way that you put it, as long as you're putting it out there, you're telling a story, you have to bring them into the story somehow.
Yep, absolutely.
You got to make some kind of a point. It could be political, it could be whatever, but there's got to be a point somewhere across in the story. It's not just, it can't be a bunch of stuff. What the hell is this?
Right. It's got to have a point of view. Well, that's really a directing issue. Is you have to have a point of view. That is, what that means translated is, you have to have an idea about the story, a particular idea about the story, whatever that might be, and you want to convey that story. Some people call it a concept. You have to have a concept for the story. So that if you're doing, Hamlet, which is the story of a boy who loses his dad, a man who loses his dad untimely, father is murdered by his uncle, and it's been arranged apparently by his mother and his uncle, and it's a revenge tragedy. You have to decide, what your point of view about that play is, and most people perceive it and retell it as the story of a kid who, really kind of has an Oedipal complex with his mom. He really kind of, love hates his mother, and so they perceive this story and translate the story from that perspective. I perceive the story as a kind of a love-hate relationship with his dad, that it's a story about a man in search of his father, despite the fact that his father's passed. So it's all what your idea is, I know that's a bit cerebral for radio, but it's also true, and I think interesting and valuable.
Yeah, regardless of what it is. You can learn from it as well, even if it is on film.
That's right. Not only are you entertained, but hopefully you're moved, and hopefully, you learn something from it. So, for example, my play Macaire is a play about a 19th century gangster in France in the 1820s, and it's a comedy. It's based on a story by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I was hired, commissioned to adapt it to the stage quite a few years ago, and I've just stuck with it. ever since, and now I finally get my chance to put it up.
How do you feel about it now? I mean, as far as the production.
It's good. I did it at the Actors Studio a few years ago as a staged reading, and the music was fantastic. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but the music came off very, very well. I had a lot of great singers and great musicians playing for me, and it was just beautiful. And the story, it's very stylized, very high style. And Robert Macaire was, in fact, an historical figure. He was a gangster that broke out of every prison in France. And they couldn't keep this guy tied down. No matter where they put him, he broke out. There are documentaries about him and so forth. My story is imaginary, and it's that he escapes from prison with his partner Bertrand, this big, sort of, Lenny character from Of Mice and Men, and they find themselves at this inn on the day a wedding is supposed to take place. And it's a very exciting story, very funny, but very, emotionally dramatic and entertaining. And it all, of course, it's a rock and roll musical, but it's a style piece. So it's a period piece with rock and roll music. So it really pushes the envelope.
Yeah, and it's not really a hesitation, not even for anybody, because look at the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty out there, yet it still made a huge, huge hit. It is a cult classic right now.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, who would have thought the first time they put up the Rocky Horror Picture Show that was going to end up becoming, the classic that it is, or even The Warriors. They didn't know it was going to be a success. They had no idea that the studio was breaking out while we were shooting that movie. They were so over budget, so far behind schedule. It was like the suits would show up every other week and be like, come on, let's get this thing moving. Now, of course, they've made, the video game has made billions.
Yeah, it has.
The actors don't make anything with it.
Yeah, they're all like, yeah, I made huge money, but we didn't get shit.
In fact, I saw David Patrick Kelly yesterday.
Oh, wow, how's he doing?
Yeah, he seemed okay. I didn't really get a chance to speak to him. I was walking down Lexington Avenue, and he was, I think, having lunch with his wife, and, he gave me a very supportive and friendly nod below, and I'm a great admirer of his. He's also a very musical fellow. I think he's in once on Broadway. He's, of course, famous for going, Warriors, come out and play. He's the one that invented that.
Yes, that was kind of like a last-minute thing because he was the one that suggested to get the bottles from wherever and say, hey, what if I did this? And he also stated that it was from a childhood experience because of a kid saying his name outside of his house, if I got that right. And that's what he incorporated. He put that in there, and it fit very, very well. And I'm glad they kept that there.
Yeah, he's a very good actor and very successful actor and nice fellow.
Oh, well, Remar, he's been doing a lot of good stuff, too.
Yeah. He was in the Quentin Tarantino movie this past summer. I forget what it's called, but Django. It's interesting. It's good. James does a lot of good stuff.
What would you consider a sacrifice in acting as far as that goes?
A sacrifice?
Yeah, what would you consider a sacrifice? Like how the military, they would have to leave their families to go do whatever they got to do?
I would say probably, we give up that, notion having a security. There is no security in my line of work. You kind of sing for your supper. And a lot of guys, take jobs with a pharmaceutical company or what have you, and you stay there for 35 years or 30 years and you retire, and, you have a secure life in front of you. And I've never had that. So I sacrificed security for freedom. And I don't have any regrets about it. I wouldn't trade it for the world, I wish I'd done a few things differently in terms of my own, activities. But I wouldn't change anything. It's been a great life for me.
Yeah, what we discussed earlier before we got here is books are no longer they're only on tablets now that you can just read on the internet, or they just go straight to movies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's just best that way, or do you think the literature should be more out there as itself?
Well, I think that without literature, we're doomed as a society. We need literature. Literature is how we gain perspective on life, and it's many times a moral guidepost. Literature is a escape from reality. It's a perspective on reality. It's a rejuvenation of the spirit, actually. It gives you a chance to, redefine who you are by virtue of the fact that you identify with a character in a story. I think we are losing that to some extent because, everything is at our fingertips.
No,
you just press a button. Why read the story when you can go get the cliff notes? It'll take you 2 minutes.
Yeah, but we got all these luxuries, electronics and everything. It's like to the point where you can't really enjoy a book anymore. It's like, what's the point? I can just look it out over here. Or just, I'm going to watch the movie instead. Well, you can't really get all the information from the book into a movie. You just like a lot would say, you can't squeeze the book into a movie.
Right.
You can only take so much.
That's why you need acting training, because you need people like me and the people that I train to learn to master the power of language and the words so that they have learned how to tell stories to keep people's attention. And, it's that power of the story that we can never, ever lose. We can never, ever live without that power of the story. And I get, concerned that we're losing touch with literature and the process of exploring literature and, the process of understanding literature. And that's why you need people that understand, like, for example, Shakespeare. And, that's why I figured if I was going to be an acting teacher, I was going to do something different than other people, and I was going to teach Shakespeare, and even as far back as, like, The Warriors. I mean, one of the reasons I got cast was because it was a verbal character, and he wasn't the guy smashing up the fence or, taking out his Bowie knife. He was the guy that was, like, reasoning and evaluating and logically figuring out what to do next. I think that is, because I was trained as an actor at Juilliard, and I've carried that sense of the classics with me,
It just seems like everything's more superficial rather than more real.
Yeah, it does seem so. And we have to fight to hold on to that,
Even with music, even with just...
Absolutely with music. Absolutely with music.
I love listening to the old classics, man.
Like who, for example?
Anything that you hear like now, Sweet Home Alabama, for example, the song.
There you go. That's a great song.
Love it. Why not? Everybody knows it.
Everybody knows it.
The same thing with film, and it's like, I compare between music and film because they're a lot alike. They share a lot of things in common.
Yes, I think they do. I think they absolutely do.
Both are equally making have made impact over the decades, even way back, even from the Egyptian days, even before then.
No question. No question.
Because that's the kind of impact it's been on now. Because if you fast forward to now, you got kids out there. It's like, have no idea what's what. Like, a lot of them's never even heard of the title Dawn of the Dead or anything, or anything like that. It's
true.
With all the things that's happening now, as far as, not to get political or anything, with all the government and all this and this, do you think it's actually going to affect film?
Well, I think that Steven Spielberg kind of nailed it when he said, things are really moving more toward television. A guy like Spielberg almost couldn't get Lincoln made because it was almost an HBO movie. It wasn't until the last minute, I think, that he was able to get the funding for a feature film. Feature films are becoming an anomaly. It's becoming so difficult for people to raise the money. There's a wonderful documentary that Alec Baldwin did called Seduced and Abandoned, and it's a story of he and James Toback, the writer, going to Cannes Film Festival and interviewing, everybody. I mean, Francis Coppola and Martin Scorsese and, every famous director, Bernardo Bertolucci, and a lot of famous actors as well, interviewing them and asking them, how they keep going. And it's becoming more difficult. I don't know politically if that has anything to do with it. I think less than politically has to do with the economy, which perhaps is political, but getting the money to do a movie has become a very challenging proposition. Even 10 years ago, it was much easier.
Yeah, it's becoming so hard that the fact that it could either, like you just said, it could be either political, it could be more financial, it could be more of the marketing side, it could be the whole thing. It's everywhere. But that's the thing with what's happening now, as far as the economy wise now. It's like, you think of the possibility it could actually hurt the industry?
I don't think so. No, I think people are always going to need entertainment. They're always going to need escape, and there's always going to be a need. There's always going to be a need for a a good film, I think that a lot of people are turning to TV for more, innovative and exploratory possibilities. But there's always going to be the need for a good film. I do think it's becoming obscenely expensive to make a picture. It's really getting out of control. I mean, $10 million is considered a low-budget movie. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
In a third world country with $10 million.
When you go in for a movie theater and you watch the film, what are your reactions? Like, you're the viewer, I should say. What do you expect to see here?
Well, just like we talked about before. I mean, I want to be entertained. I want to be, drawn into the story. Most importantly, I want to be able to identify. I want to be able to see me in the story. Even if it's a woman. Even if the main character is a woman, I want to be able to go, that's me going through that crisis. And that main character has to be under some kind of, threat or on some kind of journey, or somehow has to have the poetry of suffering and has to draw me in.
Go ahead and plug in your plays one more time. Where can we check this out? Or is it going to be on video?
Okay, so I'll be, first of all, there is On the Yard, which is coming out on DVD, a prison film directed by Ray Silver, starring John Hurd, myself, Mike Kellen, actually James Remar is in that too, Richie Bright, Dominic Chianese, On the Yard by Malcolm Brawley, written by Ray Silver, directed by Ray Silver. So that's on DVD. I'm directing a play that I wrote called Macaire at the Film School of Cologne in Cologne, Germany. And I'll be doing Taming of the Shrew this summer at Brew College of Performing Arts. Also, if you have any actors out there that are interested in studying, come to Thomas G. Waits Acting Studios. That's thomasgwaits.com. Good talking to you, Mike.